As if things can't get any crazier in the NHL, it is trade deadline week. And for the Carolina Hurricanes, who should they be targeting in the upcoming deadline on Friday? And I think there's one guy in particular. If we're going to start this whole trade season around, it should be former Hurricane Morgan Geekie. And could he out pizza the Hut once again in Carolina?
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also an AHL writer over the Calder Times, also covering baseball at Covering the Corners at SB Nation. Also, I am the co-host of the Search Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun Tuesday episode for you guys as we get to start trade deadline content. As like I said, the trade deadline's on Friday. Who should the Hurricanes really possibly be looking at to add to the roster? Which for me, it's most likely going to be depth more than anything else, since they went big game fishing for Mikko Rantanen. And I think if there's a guy they should bring back, it should be former Hurricane Morgan Geekie. And then later on the show, we're going to preview Canes at the Red Wings, because the Hurricanes do play on Tuesday night for the lone road game of the week. And it's also part of the dad's trip. Now, like I said, if there's anyone I want to start this trade deadline content week on, I think it's former Hurricane Morgan Geekie. And I even wrote an article with the Hockey Writers a few weeks back saying who should the team kind of look at as possible trade targets. I've talked about possibly Ryan Donato. Like I said, I've also thought about Geekie, Nick Schmaltz. Schmaltz being with Utah, Donato being from the Blackhawks, and like I said, Geekie from Boston. And I think if there's one guy who I think would fit this system perfectly, because he's already been there and done that, but now he's older, he's actually been playing really well with Boston as of late, and I think that is Geekie, all things considered. So when you look at what he's done in the last 5 games for Boston, yes, Boston has lost 4 games, 2 of those being in overtime. Their most recent game was a 1-0 loss to the Minnesota Wild, but he has 3 points in the last 5 games. He had a goal each in the loss in overtime to Anaheim and a loss against the Toronto Maple Leafs, also in overtime, and he had the assist in the Bruins 3-2 against Pittsburgh back on the 1st. So, but over that stretch, he also has 10 shots on goal in the last 5 games. The only games where he didn't have a shot was the loss to the Islanders back on the 27th of February in that game against Pittsburgh, where he did get the assist, but didn't have a shot on goal. But overall, he has been putting up a lot of points, has been putting up a lot of shots, and he's logged a huge amount of ice time. Over 19 minutes against Anaheim, over 21 against Toronto, over 21 against the Islanders, 17:30 against Pittsburgh, and 20:34 against the Minnesota Wild. Plus, if this is something that I think would be really good for the Hurricanes too, his faceoff percentage, he went 4-0 against Anaheim for 100%. He went 4 for 6 against the Islanders for 66.7%, 50% against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and of course he went 33% against Minnesota with only 3 faceoffs. But he's someone who I think could really benefit as if you want to go a quote unquote top 9 center, or if you want to put him on the the 4th line, which I mean, maybe yes, maybe no, but I mean, he could still be someone who can bring in who can be a good center depth piece. And the thing is, he also shoots right, and that's something that the Hurricanes have been really needing. And I know they've had Jack Roslovic as center as well, but it seems like Roslovic does a lot better on the wing. So if you're looking at someone who's I think is a more bona fide center who can win you some faceoffs and be someone they can really benefit from, I think Geekie would be that guy, because his last 2 years in Boston, this season 46.4% on the faceoffs, and then last year 44.1, which is still pretty good. But even in his last year in Seattle back in 22-23, 49%, and then he was 52.5 in 21 and 22. And the thing is, he's progressively gotten better in his career since he left Carolina. Now, the reason why he left Carolina is because he was picked in the expansion draft for the Kraken back in 21. So that's the unfortunate part of losing him. But 22 points in his first year with Seattle, then got 28. And then in Boston last year alone, 17 goals, 22 assists, career highs across the board with 39 points in 76 games. And this year already had a career high 19 goals, has 13 assists, and is already at 32 points. And it looks like he's going to be someone who's going to eclipse 40 already this year. So that's why I'm thinking if you're looking for a bona fide center who could really benefit you as a depth guy who's already been in the system, already knows Rod Burnmore, already knows most of the team, for the most part, because he was with the team for 2 games back in 1920, but he played in 36 games back in the 2020-21 season. So there's still a good number of guys that he's already played with, minus the few additions over the last few years. But you already have the instant chemistry with some of the locker room. You already know the system. He is older, so he leaves, when he was 23 with Seattle. So now he could come back at 26. So you're looking at a guy who's 3 years older, who's progressively gotten better because his ice time has gone up, average time-wise, because like his first year with Seattle was 12:36. His second year saw a dip go to 10:27, but 15 minutes and 25 seconds on average last season with Boston, and then this year already at 16:21. So you've seen his ice time has gone up, and you see his point totals go up. So there is that progression that you've seen from Morgan Geekie, where for me, I think that would be a huge asset boost if you have a guy who's already shown in his progressive of, just going from Seattle to Boston and even being in Boston where he's already gone to that next level, is that incline of the ice time has gone up and the point totals have gone up. So that he's a guy that you could definitely rely on to get, maybe 14, 15, 16, maybe even closer to 17 minutes a night. And the thing too is he's already got 4 game-winning goals this year, which is already a career high for him as well. 3 power play goals. He had 4 last year. So you can definitely tell he's a guy that the Hurricanes could also use on the power play. I mean, shot percentage-wise this year, 16.8%. His shooting percentage is great. Like I said, 16.8, highest of his entire career. If you don't 1920, he did have 75% with the area, had 3 goals in 2 games. But if you're looking over a full 60 plus games in a season, this is his best year at 16.8%. So you're seeing a progression of all these numbers just slowly going up over time for him. And like he's a very good two-way player. 137 hits last year. He already has 85 this season, 50 blocks last year as well, 23 for the 24-25 season. So you do have a guy in Morgan Geekie who can score goals, can set up assists, and throws the body. He's not afraid to do it and block shots. And he's another guy you can put on the power play. So you're seeing a lot of a culmination of a guy who could really fit into this. He's already been in the system before, but he can really fit into this system as a two-way 200-foot player who's saw his game, mature over the last few seasons. And could he have done that in Carolina? I think he could have. It's just unfortunately with Ron Francis being the GM of Seattle and they picked him in the expansion draft, you missed out on what could have been a progression of Geekie. But if Boston, who's right now kind of having a fight for a playoff spot, but I don't really think that, are they in the position to say, no, we're not going to get rid of him when it's like, where are you really at as a team? And I think if, there's a guy that could really benefit to come to Carolina, I think it's him, because Boston right now has 64 points. They are technically tied for third in the wild card race with Ottawa and the Rangers, but they're 2 points back of Detroit for the second wild card spot, and they're 4 back of Columbus for the wild card 1 spot. And they're having to fight the Rangers, the Senators. Montreal's only 1 point back, and Philadelphia is only 2 points back of Boston. So, and they're 3-5-2 in their last 10. Do they go for it? I don't really know. So it remains to be seen of, is Boston in the area where they want to keep Geekie and see what happens, or do they just turn him away and see what assets they can get for the upcoming draft or in the future? So that's kind of where I think Geekie would be the guy to go get. And, I think this could be a trade that makes sense. So what could a trade look like that? Where could he slot more so in the lineup per se? So stick around as I'll talk about what a possible trade could look like, where could we actually see him on certain lines? And I think that it'll be a perfect fit for him. So stick around. I'll do that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crackin, a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats that help keep you feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. And like I said, at the end of segment 1, what could a possible trade look like for Morgan Geekie, and where can he necessarily fit more so in the lineup other than this was face-off percentages, ways down on the power play and stuff like that. So for me, what could a possible trade look like? And I think if you're the Boston Bruins, you're maybe looking at, do you bring a center back in the trade? Are you looking for wingers? Are you looking for defense? And I think with the Hurricanes, they have a very deep farm system where you could go for, do you give up a guy like maybe like a Ryan Suzuki, or do you go give up someone a little bit farther down? Are you looking at Bendica from the defense, or are you looking at other guys that it's like, okay, how do you really fit in here? So I think there are some possible trade pieces that I think the Hurricanes can move on, could go and make a move on that, kind of makes sense for them, where it's, okay, what could possibly be someone that they're willing to give up that Boston can be like, okay, yeah, let's go make this trade. Because I think there is some factors for the Hurricanes to where they can go out and get a guy like Morgan Geekie and make a trade that essentially works for them. Because, like I said, you can maybe look at someone, that is, do you go and give up Ryan Suzuki, who's an RFA this season, that's a center? Do you flip him there? Do you go and maybe trade a, Dominic Bendica, or do you go trade an Anthony Honka? Maybe there's some possible guys there that you can maybe take a look at, or, do you go farther down and look at maybe some other, that maybe something that they'd be okay with, taking back, and then in a possible trade that maybe works out for them, where it's some other prospects down the road. So, I'm not really sure, but you also could look at draft picks too, that maybe could be something they can look at. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go and look at maybe a good defenseman that they think, like I said, could really work out well for them, or if they want to look at, what possible forwards they can look at. Maybe a Noel Gunler. Maybe that's a guy, right shot, right wing, or Ryan Suzuki. So, there's some possibilities of a lot of prospects they can look at, or if they want to go look at draft picks too. The Hurricanes, I know for this season, for this draft coming up in the summer, they have a first rounder, a third, a fourth, and a sixth and seventh. Or if they want to look at 2026, they have a first, a second, a fifth, 2 sixths, and a seventh as well. And then they have all their draft picks in 2027. So there is a possible move here where the Hurricanes could, I know they're down 2 draft picks this year. I know they're down 2 draft picks next year, but they do have that 2-6. So really, they're not really missing out. I know they're missing out on a third and a fourth for 2026, but you do have some movement with the 6th possible round pick if you want to do that, or they got all their picks in 27. So there is something here where you could look at possible what draft picks could you swing into one of these trades. And, do you look at, like I said, is there a possibility, like maybe it's like a Noel Gunler that moves on with that deal? Or is it a Justin Robidoux, if they want to go that way, or a Ryan Suzuki, because he's, in a once again, an RFA after this season. Yeah, he's been playing well. It's like, is it a change of scenery move, or, do you look at a defenseman, like does Bendica go? Do you see a Bryce Montgomery a part of a deal, or Anthony Honka? So there's a lot of possibilities here. Could there be a current roster player they might move? Maybe it depends on what Boston's willing to look out for, but I don't really know what guys. If you're looking at what a William Carey, if he's that, I don't know if that's even available because of the fact that he's still on IR. Do you look at a Tyson Jost? Do you look at a Riley Stillman? who really knows? Because it just all depends on what so what's Boston make a move for here. And I think that there's something to be said of, I think there is enough assets from the Canes to really make this work, because Morgan Geekie is also going to be an RFA after the season at 26. He's in the last year of his deal making $2 million. So you could still find a way to, while the Hurricanes maybe a little, they're close to almost $1 million over the cap, but that's terms of if you're not looking at LTR status and, cap they've built up, for the trade deadline. So there's a way Morgan Geekie's contract can fit. It's just, who is Boston willing to take on in a deal like that? Where is it a roster player, or is it some prospects and some draft capital? Because right now I think Boston really needs a lot of help in terms of, some guys who are pretty close, or someone they can kind of slot in if possible. So I don't really know for say what could be the ask here, but I think there is a way where it's like maybe it's a hot, an A or a B, B plus prospect, and maybe a pick or two, or like I said, or it's a Stillman or a Jost that maybe a certain, draft pick that could go back their way too, and just to be like, okay, well, it's a contract that ends at the end of the year. We got some draft capital out of it, and, we can work out some money either way. But I still think Geekie might be that guy. I think he's a perfect fit that could really fit into the team. And like I said, where would he fit? I kind of mentioned it back in segment 1, but you're looking at maybe a top 9 guy, because we all know that Rod Brind'Amour doesn't really number his lines. So could it be a possibility of, is it a second line, or is it a fourth line? Because technically Stahl, Martinook, and Jarvis are really they get the second line type of minutes. And then you got like KK and his line that's kind of like a 2-3 in terms of ice time, or is it a fourth? I still think even Morgan Geekie was the fourth line center. Nothing against Jost, but that's a huge upgrade, because right now if you let's say you have a center core of Aho, Kotkaniemi, Stahl, Geekie, and you got that right shot center with the 3 lefties, I think Geekie is an upgrade. Like I said, nothing against Jost, but you're talking about a guy like Morgan who's playing really well. He's definitely on pace to hit 40 points. He's already got his career high in goals. He's going to get his career high in points again this season. He's already got game-winning goals as a career high. He's almost there with his power play goals. His ice time is up. His shooting percentage is up. Like across the board, there is an upgrade here with him automatically. And I know a lot of people are kind of like, well, is he a needle mover? And I think he's much of a needle mover to where you're like, yeah, I'm okay with willing to move a certain roster guy that's, easily movable in some picks, or there's maybe a prospect or two and maybe a pick that I'd be okay with moving as well. Because like I said, the Hurricanes are so loaded in their prospect pool. They can go and trade a couple of those guys away if it's Morgan Geekie or someone in a certain level that kind of matches enough to with whatever draft potential that the Bruins would want. Because the Bruins definitely need some draft capital and need to, kind of build the cupboards back a little bit more than what they have. So there's definitely something here. So like I said, you can fit Morgan Geekie somewhere in that center core where it's a second or a fourth or however you want to do it. He's nothing against KK, but Geekie has more points than KK. So if you want to, slide Kotkaniemi to the quote unquote fourth line minutes, or however you want to do it, or spread it out more evenly, then you put, Morgan on the second line. That's still a good Aho, Geekie, Stahl, Kotkaniemi, or, the other way around where it's, Aho, Kotkaniemi, Stahl, Geekie. There's a lot of possibilities you can make out to work here. And then you can also put Morgan on the second power play unit. That would work great. And even you could also put him on the PK squad as well, because he has a lot of blocks. He has a lot of hits. So he's a perfect guy that you can kind of fit in to be like, okay, here's Aho Jarvis on PK1, and then it could be a Stahl Geekie on PK2 unit, or Stahl Martinook, or however you want to do it. But there's a way you can fit Morgan in the penalty kill unit if you really want to, but he could definitely be on the power play 2 group and get where he can play 15, 16, maybe even 17 minutes a night for the Hurricanes. Like I said, he already knows the system. He's progressively gotten better over time. So I think if you're looking for someone who fits the system well, that won't kill your cap space, he's making $2 million, and he's an RFA after this season going into 25, 26 at 26 years old, you could easily bring him back on a deal that's like a 3x3, 3.5, maybe a 3x4. there's a way that you can make this work where you bring his cap in, you got his rights for next season, and you give him an extension because you already know what he's like. You drafted him, you had him, you just lost him due to an expansion draft. And he's playing very well for Boston. So it is I think it's a much of a needle mover to where this makes sense to where why not go get him? So I think Morgan Geekie will be a perfect addition. And you know what? If you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Do you feel like the Hurricanes should go and trade for Morgan Geekie? And what do you think a possible, return would be for Boston if they're willing to give him up? Now, with all that being said, the Hurricanes do play on Tuesday night against the Detroit Red Wings, so we'll preview that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, the Hurricanes play the Detroit Red Wings on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. This is the first of 3 meetings this year. So this is the first time the Hurricanes are going to be facing Detroit. They play 7 o'clock on March 4th, which is tonight. Then they play back in Carolina on March 14th at 7. And then the last game will be on April 4th back in Detroit. The Hurricanes just came off a win, 35-22-4. The Detroit Red Wings are 30-24-6, and they've lost back-to-back game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The most recent one was in the Stadium Series game. So that's where Detroit kind of is right now. They are 6-3-1 in their last 10. Like I said, lost back-to-back games against the Jackets, but they did beat Minnesota and Anaheim in an overtime win. And before their 2 games, they lost to Tampa and Minnesota. They were on a 4-game winning streak, with a shutout win against Edmonton, beat Calgary, overtime win against Vancouver, and then a shootout win against the Seattle Kraken. Your Carolina Hurricanes 4-6-0 in their last 10, beat Chicago before going into the start of the month, and then they beat Utah. This was going back into February, and then they beat Buffalo on Whalers night, lost to Edmonton, but then they won on Sunday night in overtime against the Calgary Flames. Now, looking at what are the last 5 games, who are the points leaders and all that stuff. Sebastian Aho with 4 points and having 3 goals. Of course, his 5th overtime game-winning goal was on Sunday. And then Shane Gostisbehere with 3 assists. For the Detroit Red Wings, Alex DeBrincat, 5 goals, 7 points in the last 5 games. He's absolutely on fire for them right now. And then Patrick Kane with 4 assists. Looking at goaltending, obviously we have Pierre Kachekov in the last game, 22-11-3 with a 249 goals against and 903 save percentage and a shutout. But I have a feeling it's probably going to be Frederik Andersen back in the net, who's 6-5 with the 229 goals against and a 907 save percentage and a shutout. So most likely I'm probably going to see Frederik Andersen in this game for the Hurricanes. Now for Detroit, it's very interesting to see how they're going to pull this one out because they did get rid of Ville Husso, but they still have Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon. Talbot, 17-13-3 with a 292 and a 903 save percentage with 2 shutouts. Alex Lyon, 11-6-1 with a 274 goals against, a 902 save percentage, and a shutout. I would not be surprised if it's Alex Lyon just because of the fact that he does have a better overall stat-wise outside of shutouts. But Cam Talbot has played a lot more games, so there is a possibility it could be a Cam Talbot Frederik Andersen matchup, but I would also not overlook a possible Alex Lyon matchup if that is the case. Now, looking over the tail of the tape, what are the team stats? What are the keys to the game? And I think this is where it's going to be huge, where it's going to be special teams. Special teams is going to be the very biggest key factors because the Hurricanes are 24th in the power play, 19.2%, and the Detroit Red Wings, oh my absolute goodness, they are the second best in the NHL with a 29.5%, and that's going to be a very big matchup because the Hurricanes, second best penalty kill unit in the NHL, 83.4%. But on the flip side, the Red Wings are the absolute worst penalty kill unit, 69.5%. So if you're the Hurricanes, while you are 24th on the power play, you definitely need to take advantage of a very, very dead last in the league penalty kill unit. If you have the man advantage, please take advantage of that because the Red Wings are the worst penalty kill unit in the entire league. You need to beat up on that PK very badly. And of course, the penalty kill unit for the Hurricanes, they're going to have their work out from because you're talking about the second best power play unit as well. So special teams is going to be very, very big where you have the best, second best on second best in each category, but you do have a a better percentage of your power play against their very bad PK. So essentially, don't give them any reason to kill you or basically kill your own power play if you have the opportunity. Now, goals for and goals against. The Hurricanes are 11th in the league at 3.2 goals for per game, while the Red Wings are 23rd in goals allowed at 3.18. So you are scoring more than they do give up, but it's 11 to 23 in terms of rankings. So you have to, I see this every time, start early, play 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey. That's all we're asking for. Just consistent Hurricanes hockey from start to finish. Now, flip side, Detroit, 2.88 goals for per game. That's 19th. But the Hurricanes give up the 8th least amount at 2.75. So you're not giving them a lot of goals. This team isn't really scoring a lot on the Red Wings side of things, even though they did lose 5-3 in the Stadium Series. So this is where defense really needs to step up. This is where we need the defense to shut down DeBrincat, Larkin, Kane, all those guys. You're built on the defense. The defense needs to show up. It's been kind of wishy-washy over the last few games. This is where we need to lock in, shut them down. They have guys that can score on this Detroit Red Wings team. Yes, maybe they're not scoring at a huge rate. They are 19th, but you still have to shut them down. Like I said, you got to shut them their power play unit second. You got to eliminate that. Stay out of the box. Focus a lot more on 5-on-5 because right now the Red Wings are not a good 5-on-5 team. If you can impose your will as one of the best 5-on-5 teams in the league, you can really put a hurt on the Red Wings. And you definitely need to do this because you need to start building more points because the Jackets aren't that far behind in the wild card race and you have points on New Jersey, but you have to find a way to play your game. So like I said, so when it comes to special teams, you got to win the special teams battles or stay on 5-on-5. Do not go to the box. Impose your will as a 5-on-5 team. And like I said, that leads into starting early, play 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey, and finish the Dutch trip with a win. You saw that you won for them on Sunday against the Calgary Flames. Go into Detroit and do the same thing against the Red Wings. Go in there, get your points, have a 2-game winning streak, and build on to Boston, who's coming into town Thursday, the day before the trade deadline. You want to build good momentum going into the trade deadline because you could be like, okay, Eric Tulsky, we're doing well. Give it some extra help so we can get to that next step. So this is a week where you need to win Tuesday. You need to win Thursday. You need to have a good week leading into that trade deadline where you're like, hey, go get us some more help. Give us more depth so we can go make that run. So definitely going to be – I'm not saying it's a must-win, but this is a can't-lose game in a week where it's trade deadline time. You've got to build the momentum that you can. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm optimistic the Hurricanes can get a win. It's just, are we going to get the Hurricanes that are going to show up and play 60 minutes of hockey from start to finish rather than kind of middle around, kind of kick into the gear in the second period and really get going in the third? The first period has not been great for the Hurricanes as of late. We need to see start to finish full 60. No other way to say this. We just need full 60-minute Hurricanes hockey and be ready to go. Go get the win in Detroit. Win it for the Dads on the Dad trip. Bar none said and done. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But guys, that will be a Tuesday episode of Locked on Hurricanes. Thank you for making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, well, why don't you check out Locked on NHL Podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked on NHL on YouTube or listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at TheZachary Martin, where I have link trees in all my bios, where you can check out my articles at the Hockey Writers when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes, or AHL coverage over at the Calder Times. And if you want to check out my baseball content, make sure to keep an eye out for that over at Covering the Corner. If you want to check out my other podcasts, well, it's the Searchcast and all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For this show, well, it's Locked on Hurricanes on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio. Follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, well, it's Locked on Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you don't miss the show. Thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Let me know in the comments, do you think the Carolina Hurricanes should go for Morgan Geekie? And also, make sure to share it with all other KX so they become everydayers just like you. Hope everyone enjoyed this Tuesday episode of Locked on Hurricanes. Enjoy your Tuesday. and have fun watching the Carolina Hurricanes play the Detroit Red Wings. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.